Well, one of the recent events that stalled the world is that of the killing of George Floyd, a 45-year-old man in Minnesota. Floods of people everywhere, not just in the US, but all over, got over to protest against the killing. But a careful look at the problem itself will make you realize that it is just not a problem happening to distant people, but rather happening close home to each one of us. You see, I fell in love with a lady who is my wife now, and she happens to be from the northeast of our country. But it is very interesting how people react when we are together on the road. Let me give you a few examples. Once we were at the signal waiting for the light to turn green, and as we were waiting there, a school bus came by and it was full of children. And as they looked into the car and realized my wife's facial looks, they all shouted together in unison saying, "Chinese, Chinese, Chinese." And my wife to that reacted and said, "No, Indian from Northeast." And I said, there's no point protesting against it. They would not even hear you. They all are together shouting and calling you as Chinese. I must also tell you this, that last year we were together in Nepal, and we had gone into the country and we were just exiting out, and we were at the immigration, and the immigration stops her and tells her, "Look, you can't leave the country. You're not allowed to." And I'm like, "No, we both came together into the country. How would you not let us go back together?" And he's like, "No, she just cannot go. We cannot release her." Well, they interrogated us and took a lot of time. Our flight was about to go, and I'm kind of thinking, my goodness. And all that they said is, go to the Indian embassy and get an NOC for her so that you would take her along with you. I'm like, "But look, there's a seal on the passport. We came together. Look at the pictures. We were together." Later on, after about half an hour of talks back and forth, one of the officers came up and he said, "How do you prove that you are married to her and she's your wife?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, if you had just told me earlier, I would have proved it. Look, I got a ring, I got a name, look at the photos of being together." And it took a lot of convincing. Now, I will not blame them because a lot of other stuff happens there as well. Well, I also think sometimes when we both go to the weekend market, the street market, a lot of people, when they see her, the prices of the vegetables would go up, and I have to tell her, "Come, hide behind me, let me ask first." So as much as we protest the killing of George Floyd and racism, we must as much recognize it as a problem lurking in our backyard. Believe me, all of us are guilty of it. Oh, how, you may ask? Well, just ask yourself. How did I, or how do I treat my subordinates at work? You may be an officer. How do you treat your clerk? The driver who drives for you, how do you treat him? A maid who works for you in the house. Did you realize whenever anything goes missing in the house, what is your head saying? She's the one who's taken it. Whenever a banana goes missing, what is your head saying? Usi ne khaya hai. Is the maid who gets pointed all the time. How do you treat the waiter when you go to a restaurant to have food? Many times we call him and say, "Oh, idara." He certainly has a name. How do we treat the laborer who is working for us in our house or in our facility? How about treating the rickshaw guy who probably with all his might ferried you from the metro station to your house? In fact, I've seen people fight over with the rickshaw guy over 5 rupees and call him all kinds of names and berate him. And mind you, all of these people are not from the same class or the same caste and the same social economical status that we come from. They are probably from different rungs of the society. The question that we must ask is, how do we treat each one of them? You see, your treatment of the other person largely depends upon how you view personhood. Your treatment of the other person largely depends on how you view personhood. Do you really believe that we as humanity share life and the worth and the equal right to live it? And that belief system would actually have ramification to other behavioral patterns that we would have. Of course, some of us may stay in Juhu, some of us may stay in GK in Delhi or Koramangala in Bangalore or in Dharavi. Some of us may drive a car that costs us money. Some of us may walk on our foot. Some of us may walk thousands of kilometers. But you see, essentially, we are human beings. Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying hierarchy is not important. In fact, hierarchy is critical for the functioning of a nation. Of course, if there is no hierarchy, there is anarchy. Where there is no hierarchy, there is, in fact, anarchy. Now, let me explain. In my organization, my boss may be at the far higher end of the organization. I may be at the middle or the lower end or the spectrum of the organization. But in my essence, in our essence, we are the same human being. You see, our roles are different, but in the essence, we are essentially human beings. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm afraid to say this. Sometimes we give more worth to our dogs than to those who share in the same humanity with us. Pity, isn't it? So all I'm saying, my friend, is just this. Instead of saying he is black, he is white, he is low class, he is high class, he is low caste, he is high caste, can we see ourselves as human beings? And as I reflect on that question of personhood, I am led to look at the life of Jesus Christ. And as you look at his life, you realize that he was a man who considered everybody to be equal. In fact, some of his closest associates were the tax collectors who were rather shunned by the society, prostitutes and women who had no validity in the society. He treated everybody equal, including the thief who was hung on the cross. And as I look at and reflect on the life of Jesus Christ, I realize that I cannot look at a person and judge him by the color of the skin, but I have to look a bit more deeper into the color of his heart and realize that life is worth and life is meaningful because of the one who adds worth and meaning to it. You see, for me, I had the privilege of working with the Leprosy Mission. And I remember that first day when I walked into the gates of the Leprosy Hospital in Naini, Allahabad. And as I walked in and as I saw the faces of those people who lived there, eyes observed and, hands gone and legs deformed, I was pretty much scared and paranoid. I thought to myself, oh God, where have I come to work? But the Leprosy Mission also taught me something very interesting. In fact, they told me that these people who are there, who are affected by leprosy, are not lepers. They are indeed human beings first, human beings affected by leprosy. And therefore, we would never call them as lepers. We would call them as human beings affected by leprosy. And a beautiful scene that would often happen was the morning chapels. And as we would come together for the morning chapels, the leprosy affected patients were thrown off from their families. Whoever wanted back home, their own sons and daughters have thrown them. They were staying with us on campus, and they all would line up to the chapel, and we all would sit together and clap our hands and sing praises to the Lord. That was a beautiful scene of just coming together and not tagging them to be a particular segment of people, but looking at each one of them with value and dignity and honor that God bestows upon them. Yes, human beings, yet affected with leprosy. So, as much as we protest racism around the world, let's ensure our backyards are clean at the same time. It's not a distant problem. It is a problem that is lurking around us, within us, and probably in our own backyards.